Hi everybody, Donny from Fern here, and I've got some horticultural FAQs for you today. So this is regarding house plants, things that regularly get asked that we hear here at Fern about the ailments of house plants. Now firstly, all house plants are different, but there are usually some very common problems that you might find with house plants. So you can't necessarily apply this to every single plant. Plants are generally of course different varieties. But as I say, there are some sort of common issues here and there that you may well find with your plants. So just want to alleviate some of those for you today. So first of all, this one kind of made me laugh. I had a lady a little while ago who spoke to me and she told me that her aloe vera had melted. What she meant by this was that there was too much moisture in her aloe vera, okay? So I think it started to sort of droop and then get squishy, okay? So an aloe vera is a succulent, holds a lot of moisture. If you've seen an aloe vera before, of course, they have these sort of big succulent leaves holding a lot of moisture in their bodies. So I said to her, how often did you water it? The lady said, I'd watered it every day. I really wanted to look after it, make sure it was well. Well, therein lies the problem. With an aloe vera, you don't really need to water it every day because it holds a lot of the moisture in the body of the plant itself. So typically speaking, if a plant looks like it's going mushy, so for instance, if you notice that it's starting to look like it's rotting, if you touch it and it feels really, really wet, then that's often an indicator that there's too much water inside of the plant, okay? So a mushy plant is usually an overhydrated plant. There's always ways that you can save a plant if it's got too much water in it. It's always best to avoid this, so you always want to avoid overwatering a plant, but there are ways that you can save it. So one of the sort of quickest things that you can do is to leave the plant in a warm spot, so by a radiator. You want to start getting the roots nice and dry, okay? Because if there's a problem with the roots, that's going to spread to everything. Root rot is the most common cause of plant death from what I've experienced within plants. So if, say, I'd overwatered this calathea here, then what I may want to do is leave it somewhere warm. And if it's really, really wet, you can take it a step further, take it out of the pot like that. And if you wrap a little bit of newspaper around the root ball, this part here, loosely, that may well help alleviate some of that stress, but unfortunately with overwatering that can cause rot, which can be very difficult to take out, okay? So if you do find that your plant looks like it's melting, in the words of this lady, that may well be the case that there's too much moisture in it, okay? Another one is my leaves are yellow. Now if you've got yellowing leaves, it can mean various different things, and of course various different things with different plants. But the most common things, the most common causes of yellowing of leaves can be down to malnutrition of a plant. So in the spring and summer, it's advised with a lot of house plants that you do give it the odd feed. So you want to specifically use a house plant feed or perhaps a succulent feed in that instance, okay? So a lack of nutrients in the plant means that the plant will start to look paler, colours may be less vivid, less pronounced, and you may well see yellowing of the leaves, but this can also be down to a lack of light. So the plant can't photosynthesize. Of course, plants get nutrition from the sun. So it is, generally speaking, a lack of nutrition a lot of the time with yellowing leaves, but it can also be part of overwatering. So let's say, for instance, you notice your plant's mushy and it's also going yellow. Well, that could be a number of things, but it could also be related to the fact that it's overwatered. Now, if your plant isn't getting enough light, and of course it depends on the type of plant, some plants like more light, some like less, that can well be the case. So let's say you have a plant, good way to tell if it's lacking in sunlight is by observing the stems of the plants. So let's say you've got a plant and it has like a nice long stem, but you've noticed the leaves look a bit yellow. What you may find is if you've got loads and loads and loads and loads of stem and a very sparse population of foliage, that's called etiolation when that happens. So what that means is the plant is putting lots and lots of energy into looking for light. So you're seeing less growth of foliage. The plant is not really spending its energy to grow new foliage. It's spending its energy to sort of grow out and look for light, which is going to be a strain on the plant and of course lead to malnourishment because it would take quite a long time for the plant to find the right spot. So that's usually the case, but of course it is dependent on the type of plant that you have, bearing in mind that all plants do like different light levels, which leads me up to the next question. Why are my leaves going crispy? Again, that could be too much light. So if you have like a nice sort of lush tropical plant and you notice that the leaves are going a bit brown, they might develop what we call sunspots on them. and that means that there's a little bit too much light going on. There's sunburn on the plants, okay, on the leaves themselves. This can also be a sort of knock-on effect as well of overwatering. Sometimes in a peace lily, you might find that. Now, people will often tell you like a peace lily is very nice and easy to look after. It can actually be quite tricky. So if you do notice that perhaps the leaves are going a bit crispy, they're going droopy, that can also be endemic of overwatering. And finally, this is one we do hear quite a lot. Why is there white residue on the soil around the stems of my plants? This is pretty common. Now, a lot of the time people think this is a fungal infection, but to sort of alleviate that stress, that's not usually the case. A lot of the time our houseplants, we water them with tap water. If you're in London, the tap water is relatively hard. So what that white stuff is, it looks like mold, but a lot of the time it's actually just chlorine. So the water in tap water obviously has a bit of chlorine in, because that's good for us, but it's not really good for houseplants. So if you do notice that, that's essentially just the plant secreting that excess chlorine from the water, and it's got to go somewhere, so you'll see it appearing on the surface of the soil. So certain plants dislike that more than others. Some plants are more hardy, can get away with tap water no problem, but if you are using tap water to water your plants, all I'd suggest is if you take your tap water, let's say this thing here was empty, wasn't a terrarium, what I'd do is I'd pop some tap water in here, leave it for a day. That allows any of the chlorine to dissipate, and then I can use that water confidently to water my plants. Alternatively, you can use rainwater if you like, but really we're just looking to get rid of any of that excess chlorine, because that's what's going to kick up a lot of this excess residue of white mold, what looks like white mold, on the surface of your soil. Now, if you have any more queries, please do feel free to drop us a line, or alternatively come along to one of our workshops. It'd be great to chat to you. Thank you.